Chapter 2 was okay. It was a bit bloated, it was messy, but I feel like there was some things in it that really redeemed this movie to me and made it not as bad. Before I get into heavy spoilers, I want to get into what I really liked about the movie first. I feel like this movie is perfectly cast. It's like they threw the kid actors into an aging machine and then had them act in this movie, because this, coupled with the Losers Club synergy and friendship, just felt seamless to me between both sets of actors. Bill Skarsgård is great as always as Pennywise. I feel like he has redefined Pennywise and has made him an iconic horror character. And if they ever remake this story again 27 years from now, it'll be really tough to top that exceptional performance. If the on-set stories are to be believed, he really does bring that otherworldly horror in his performance. In order for me to fully articulate what I disliked and liked about this movie, I'm going to have to spoil it. So if you haven't seen this movie yet, I know this review is super late, but if by chance you haven't seen this movie yet, I recommend skipping to this part of the video. To top off what I really enjoyed about this movie, I would say that the opening of this film is one of the strongest parts of it. It was brutal, upsetting, and legitimately creepy and eerie. It was an extremely strong way to start the movie and remind the audience of what a menace Pennywise is. I also really liked the other scare involving Pennywise and a little girl under the bleachers. It shows that Pennywise knows how to use even little insecurities to devour his victims. It was unsettling and it was really brutal, especially. I like that this movie doesn't pull its punches when it comes to killing off kids. So many movies try their best to avoid it or cut away, but this movie does it in a way where the violence is just short enough to leave an impact on you, and I really like that part of this movie. While I thought the story itself was a bit dull and repetitive, I did thoroughly enjoy the scenes where the characters were just talking. The scenes where they're catching up and reminiscing about their childhoods was really interesting to me. I like the aspect of an ancient evil returning after 27 years, and the group of people that originally stopped it are coming back with it, in order to finally put an end to it for good. Unfortunately, the stupid fucking clown movie gets in the way. I understand that horror is ultimately subjective, and the things I find scary you might not necessarily find scary. However, at the end of the day, I am not afraid of clowns or the elderly, so 99% of the scares just didn't work for me. In fact, I would say that a lot of the time, legitimately great scares were ruined by awful jump scare sound effects and cheesy Goosebumps level monster design. The scene I would love to highlight is the scene where Bev visits her old home in the hopes of finding her trinket and finds that it's inhabited by an old lady. It's in the trailer, so I'm sure you've seen it. This old lady does a pretty good job of acting creepy. There's some unnerving stuff happening in the background. It's nice and atmospheric. The old lady says some creepy stuff that reminds Bev of her traumatic past with her father, and then she turns into this weird, long tit-having monster thing that's really not that scary. I had an issue with the horror elements in the first chapter, but this movie seemed to be packed full of horror scenes, so it made the already bloated runtime feel even longer. There was a lot of things in this movie that could have been cut out entirely and it would have made no difference. The thing with Pennywise bringing back the bully was so entirely pointless. If I'm not mistaken, the book has the older bully injure Mike Hanlon, which makes the losers group weaker going into their final battle with Pennywise. All he serves is just kind of as a distraction for the losers group in the first place, and makes you question why Pennywise even needed him in the first place. I really like the adventure fantasy horror genre, and I felt like the first part got it so right for the most part. But this movie blunders it by having so many non-scary scenes. I love the stuff with the Losers Club, and I wish they focused on that much more. A lot of the scares and a lot of the tense moments felt undercut by jokes. There's a lot of strange editing choices in this movie, and one that's been highlighted recently is the scene where Eddie goes under the pharmacy and is interacting with the leper again. And then when the leper throws up on him, it plays that song. It plays it for such a brief moment that it makes you question, like, was that supposed to be scary? Or they realized it wasn't scary and they changed it in editing to try to make it funny or something. And it was just so out of place and off-putting. There's a lot of those moments in this movie. Another moment is where during the final battle, I think it's Eddie and Richie, they're going through the whole scary door, not so scary door thing from the first movie again, and they open it and they find a little Pomeranian, and it's like, oh, that's cute, haha, but the way it's edited makes it seem so much longer. Like, it's a joke that really, really overstays its welcome. And once you know what's going to happen, it's obviously Pennywise is going to turn into this weird, disgusting thing. you're just waiting for it to come and it takes like 30 seconds longer than it should. Had they just shaved it a little bit and kept it a little bit shorter, I think it would have been fine. But the fact that it stays for so long makes it so weird to me. I found It Chapter 2 to be good, but underwhelming in terms of delivering a satisfying adventure horror movie. I'm glad I saw it, and seeing it with someone who fucking loves Pennywise made the experience a whole lot better. But at the end of the day, I'd give It Chapter 2 a 5 out of 10. Another movie I saw was Ad Astra, starring Brad Pitt, and it was pretty good. There was a fair bit I enjoyed about this movie, especially its cinematography, world building, score, and Brad Pitt's performance stood out as exceptional to me. I did have some issues with the film's pacing and lack of characters, but I gotta delve deeper into this movie to explain it, so I gotta spoil it. So, if you want to hear my spoiler-free final thoughts, skip to this part of the video. I like how mundane space travel is in this world. It's just like taking a flight somewhere. You got coach and business class, hot towels and stuff, and it takes what was once seen as a life-changing experience as something commercialized and lame. Even the moon in this movie is littered with ads, and it was really neat to see this interpretation even in the far future, because while it is futuristic, it's still grounded in some kind of reality. Stuff like lunar rovers and vehicles in Mars and space still look dopey and kind of low tech. I thought the set design and cinematography helped sell this vision of our future. Brad Pitt does a great job playing this tired veteran astronaut who's sent on an emotional mission to find his father, who's seen as a legend in the space field, but he's lost his mind on his ever-hopeless search for intelligent life in our universe. The overall story is actually a really solid premise for a character study, but unfortunately a lot of the interactions Brad Pitt's character has with others just flat out do not work for me. Characters are introduced and then dealt with way too quickly. There's literally no time given in this movie for any of these characters to fully develop. And not just side characters, but main characters that are integral to the plot of this movie are seriously introduced and then dealt with in the same scene. It really takes away from the emotional journey this movie tries to take you on when I'm not given the time to connect with the characters in it. And this is ultimately what frustrated me about this movie. I love the main character, its setting, its tone, message, and existential ideal of our place in the universe. But the main conflict of the film itself is so underwhelming and undercooked that I left the theater wondering what could have been. I did enjoy Ad Astra, and I definitely recommend that you check it out. It really needs help right now. The movie just frustrated me because I felt like had it explored every other character aside from Brad Pitt, it would have been a much more enjoyable experience for me. Overall though, at the end of the day, I would give Ad Astra a 7 out of 10. Robert Eggers' The Lighthouse is a film that I have been looking forward to for a very, very long time, pretty much since it was first announced. Because I felt like his last movie, The Witch, was really fantastic, so I knew that this director was one that I really wanted to keep my eye on. It brings me great joy to say that this movie not only lived up to, but far, far exceeded my expectations of it. Robert Pattinson gives a great performance, but Willem Dafoe absolutely steals the show and delivers something that I can only describe as mesmerizing. Both of these actors play seamen from the early 1900s to such an incredible degree that their performances, coupled with the excellent cinematography and set design, just suck you into this world and immerse you from minute one of the film. The movie also has this consistent aura of uneasiness and tension. It's so perfectly unnerving and genuinely frightening at some points. But it also manages to be hilarious at the same time. The film manages to find the balance between comedy and horror so perfectly that I don't think I've ever seen it done so well in another movie before. It made fart jokes the funniest thing in the world. The score is incredible, it complements the scenes in this movie perfectly while not feeling too distracting or overpowering. When I think back on scenes in this movie, I often accompany them with the soundtrack in my mind, and I don't really ever do that with movies. The score paints such a vivid picture for me, and it's one of the better soundtracks I've heard in a movie in general. The black and white is absolutely gorgeous. This really feels like a lost movie from the early 1900s that we recovered somehow. The way that the black is so deep in this movie really brings out the characters' exhausted expressions. They look so tired, miserable, and crazy. It's great. It's incredibly refreshing to see a horror movie in the year of 2019 focus more and more on the characters and dialogue to carry its horror premise. The cinematography and shot composition is absolutely amazing as well. The film does a great job of capturing the claustrophobic and paranoid feeling of these characters. However, it's the authenticity of the lighthouse that's probably its most impressive feat to me. The way that these characters act and talk, the jobs they do at the lighthouse, and even the cutlery they use is all so well researched and genuine that the more out there aspects of the film don't even stand out as that odd. Without giving anything specific away, I'm positive that sailors really thought what they did about seagulls back in the day. As you can tell, I absolutely love this movie and I am recommending it 100% to anyone who's watching this video. However, there are some things in this film that may hinder your enjoyment. The aspect ratio is actually pretty small compared to most films. The 1:19:1 ratio may distract those who are used to the more modern 1:85:1 ratio, but honestly, you stop noticing it after a couple of minutes, and it really adds to the authenticity that this film is going for. Another thing that was kind of distracting were the heavy accents. Willem Dafoe goes full Captain Ahab in this film, and the movie makes fun of it here and there, but there were times where I was like, what did he say? There wasn't any subtitle in the film, so at times I kind of missed a couple of lines, but again, you learn to catch on to the accents, and neither of these things really hold the film back by any means whatsoever. The Lighthouse is a film that perfectly blends horror and comedy with constantly rising tension and paranoia. There are powerful, career-defining performances from both Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe, and the cinematography and soundtrack are masterclass examples of elevating a movie to perfection. The Lighthouse is by far my favorite movie of 2019. I'm looking forward to seeing it again and again and again and again, and I'm giving the film a 10 out of 10.